welcome to the Bond Room Unlocked. We take an item from this 27-year-old Bond collection and relate it to one of the Bond films that we know and love. And this week we'll be looking at Spectre from 2015 and delve into this book, Blood, Sweat and Tears, The Making of Spectre. Is one of those films that have both good and bad elements for me. You would think because Eon gained the rights to use the word Spectre and the symbol and bring the character of Blofeld back, that we would have been given something to sink our teeth into. Making Blofeld James Bond's stepbrother was a massive fail for me. It just didn't work. And sometimes you just don't have to join the dots. But that being said, Spectre does have one of the best pre-title sequences in any of the Bond films. Spectacular, sumptuous, high-octane action, which is what we've come to expect. And it also has one of the best henchmen to grace our screens in recent years. A force to be reckoned with in the form of Mr. Hinx, played by former pro wrestler and actor now, Dave Bautista. Now, it's not the first time that we've seen pro wrestlers turn to acting in a Bond film. Bautista normally gets to play the badass characters, and you don't get much harder than Mr. Hinx, who is essentially a henchman stroke assassin for Ernst Stavros Blofeld and Spectre. Denise, what do you think of Mr. Hinx?
Hinx. He's a very scary man. He's the man that Spectre used for special projects that nobody else would even come close in accomplishing.
The very first time we meet Mr. Hinx is in the Spectre meeting room at the Palazzo Cadenza in Rome. He's standing quietly, he's smartly dressed, but you do get that sense of foreboding that he means business. And what I love about this, I love the throwback to older Bonds, because in Bond lore, someone always dies around a Spectre meeting table. And in this case, it's Spectre agent Moreau, who cringingly has his eyes gouged out and his neck broken by Mr. Hinx, who basically just wants to take his seat at the table.
And as far as Hinx and the eye gouging scene, still can't watch it.
Absolutely agreed, Denise. It is so in your face, if you pardon the pun. And the last time we saw a Bond film up in the ante on extreme deaths would be back in 1989 with Licence to Kill. Let's hear from another newcomer to the Bond Room Unlocked, Miles, and his thoughts on Mr. Hinx.
Miles Winterburne reporting for duty. So, Mr. Hinx from 2015 Spectre, probably one of the best elements of the film for me. I'm not a huge fan of the film overall, and I think it's Craig's weakest, that's my opinion. But so his introduction in the Spectre board meeting, he really proves he's a dangerous guy and you really don't want to mess with him. I think that's a really good setup in the film. Some of the following sequences that he appears in, maybe not as good. The car chase sequences isn't great. I think most people feel that way. The snow chase sequence is pretty good. I do love his gun though. That's great, the double-barreled gun. But it's the train sequence later on in the film where he really comes into his own. Bond is clearly sort of almost outmatched in that fight. He's really struggling. If it wasn't for Madelaine's support, I think he'd probably met a sticky end. But how he ultimately gets dispatched with the barrels and the chain and pulled off the train is just brilliant. So it's just a real shame he didn't get a cameo in No Time to Die as well. I think it would have been great to see him come back. See ya.
Thanks to Miles there. I just want to reflect back on something that Miles mentioned, and that was the car chase in Rome. It promised so much. I mean, you have Rome, one of the busiest and most beautiful cities in the world. And if you juxtapose that with an Aston Martin DB10 and a Jaguar CX-75, it just oozes sexiness. But unfortunately, it failed to climax, which is a shame really, because the stunt work itself is pretty darn good, a definite speed battle. The item I want to share with you from my collection, which is related to Spectre, is this Blood, Sweat and Bond Behind the Scenes of Spectre book, curated by Rankin. Now, if you are a reader who loves lots of words on a page, then this isn't the book for you. This is a visual aid that shows you behind the scenes, and it's a really stunning book. And what I really like here is this gorgeous, sumptuous inside layer of Spectre symbols. It's just great. And literally this is just, as you can see, a very visual book, very, very bright, stunning, lots of pictures. There is you know, prose sort of dotted in between just to tell you a little bit about what was going on, but it is very much a picture book, and it is just stunning, and I'm glad to have it in my collection. And as Miles so rightly said earlier, that the fight between Bond and Mr. Hinx on the train is a masterclass in fine stunt work between the two actors. Mr. Hinx shows physical strength, durability and downright determination to try and dispatch Bond, and he's winning. I would have loved to have seen Hinx return in No Time to Die. I can just imagine him standing there in the Cuban scenes in a tuxedo, standing opposite Bond, and there'd be a moment of recognition, which would be like a Roger Moore moment. But of course, without Bond even touching him, we all know that Hinx would have been dealt a final blow with the virus that was implanted in him. Could have been a really good scene, quite amusing in fact. So really, I suppose we have to assume that Mr. Hinx met his fate falling from that train.
Shoot!
So that's it for our Spectre stroke Mr. Hinx edition. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have done, please give it an MI6 stamp of approval and click on the notifications below. And why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any further missions that take place. You can also find the Bond Room Unlocked on Instagram and on Facebook, where we have over 1,000 members now, and it's growing every day. I'd like to thank Denise and Miles for their valid points about Spectre and Mr. Hinx, and I'd like to thank you for joining me at the Bond Room Unlocked.